Hello, I'm Ed Martin.
And I'm Mindy Mazur. Welcome to a special pre-election edition of Midwest Talking Points. It's a special edition because we've got a lot going on with several guests joining us in our last show before what could very likely be the biggest election of our lifetimes on November 4th.
Mindy, that's one point on which you and I are in total agreement. And because it's our last show before that big day, Election Day, we want it to be as jam-packed as possible. So how does this lineup sound to you? Jason Rosenbaum, political reporter for the Columbia Daily Tribune, will be our first guest. Then Mindy and I will sit down with Joan Barry, Democratic nominee in Missouri's 1st Senatorial District, and right after that, her Republican opponent, State Representative Jim Lemke, will be here. Finally, we'll speak with Judy Baker, the Democratic nominee for United States Congress in Missouri's 9th District. What a jam-packed and rockin' show.
That's 4 interviews in one night. Jason, Joan, Jim, and Judy on our busiest show yet. So let's go ahead and get started. Our first guest is political reporter Jason Rosenbaum. Jason writes for the Columbia Daily Tribune, and he also blogs day and night for the Tribune's daily politics blog. Jason, welcome to Midwest Talking Points.
Thank you for having me today.
I'm sure you're really busy right now, so we appreciate your time. Tell us what you've been up to in mid-Missouri.
Well, beyond just traveling all over the beautiful central Missouri region, I've been writing about a lot of local races, and I've also been writing extensively about the 9th District congressional race, which is not only Boone County and Columbia, but I believe 24 other counties across northeast, central, and eastern Missouri. That is getting national attention and is becoming very, very competitive. And we also have probably one of the more competitive state house races in Columbia, and across mid-Missouri we have a bunch of very competitive state house elections as well.
Jason, before we get into some of those races specifically, your blog tries to mix a lot of different aspects of political reporting. You use your video camera a lot, yourself out on the trail, you write about it. You also have a knack for using the title of your blog entries, referring to music and titles.
Song titles.
Song titles. Tell us a little bit about the blog and where people can view it, and kind of how the being a political reporter and blogging is sort of melding into kind of one role.
Well, the blog was something I started when I started working at the Tribune, and I really wanted to go all in as far as effort-wise, but I also wanted to make sure I got many obscure references to bands such as Depeche Mode, Joy Division, Thursday, as humanly possible.
I'm more of a Depeche Mode person, but...
But in all seriousness, I think blogging can really have a lot of positive effects toward the newspaper industry, especially the incorporation of video and audio. I found during this election season the video content has been very popular. Several have been watched by tens of thousands of people, single clips and whatnot. One, I believe, was actually mentioned on Fox News' special report about our good friend Brock Olivo.
Awesome.
And
Fox News, that's the top of the...
Remind us, what was that about?
Well, it was an interview I had with him in Herman during his announcement speech, and I posted it actually at 12:30 a.m., and it just sort of became a nationwide minor explosion that captivated many political insiders across the nation and the world. And Brock himself has made fun of it or made reference to it too, so I think he's a good sport about it.
Let's look at a couple of those key races you mentioned. You mentioned one of the Missouri House races that's really heated up, and I think it's getting attention from across the state. Tell us a little bit about the two candidates, Kelly and Rob, and what's going on in that.
Well, for whatever reason, the 24th State House District has been the most expensive and one of the more competitive State House districts in the...
The district is right around...
It's southern Columbia and southern Boone County. And you have Ed Robb and Ashland as well, as I'm sure Mindy is aware of. Right. It's competitive because it's split relatively evenly. It has a lot of media outlets due to put TV ads and radio ads and newspaper ads on. And usually you have two very qualified and competitive candidates. You have Ed Robb, who's a former economist and an incumbent, who ran against Jim Ritter last time in a very close and competitive contest. And you also this time have Chris Kelly, who was a state representative before, became a judge, before that was a county clerk, who's been basically running for a year now. And these are two very wonkish, budget-oriented guys who have a lot of money behind them and a lot of energy. And it's basically a clash of the titans, essentially. And because of that, it's gotten very competitive and at times very, very testy between the two.
Well, they've been campaigning very hard, and so has Judy Baker, who's going to be on the show later, and Blaine Lichtenmeyer for that 9th congressional seat that you mentioned earlier. Tell us your views on that.
Well, you had a wacky primary in both the Republican and a Democrat. You had primaries. You had like 8 major candidates, and Judy Baker and Blaine Luetkemeyer were the 2 who emerged. And now they roughly have the same amount of money, although Luetkemeyer has loaned himself a considerable amount of money. You have both national organizations coming in, the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, the Republican National Campaign Committee pouring in money for third-party ads. You have both candidates hurling things back and forth at each other. This is a real barn burner, and it's really quite a change from 2 years ago when this district wasn't even close to being competitive. And now I think both sides, regardless of whether you ask Republicans or Democrats, think this is going to be a very close and competitive contest. Very even right now between the two.
Here's your chance to be famous, Jason. Who's going to win, Kelly, Rob, and Luetkemeyer, Baker? Do the picks for us. Tell us the numbers.
I'm not doing that, Ed. You're going to have to.
Come on.
I think if I actually did that, I would probably have a dead horse in my bed, sort of like the Godfather. So.
Now, wait a
As
second.
a good neutral journalist that he is.
I would rather not predict.
Hey, favorite Depeche Mode song?
Oh, Everything Counts is
Good
probably
one.
my favorite one,
Wow.
followed by Never Let Me Down Again.
Good. Thank you. Thanks, Jason, for being on the
Thanks for
show.
being here.
Thank you very much.
We appreciate you being here. We value the perspective, especially coming from mid-Missouri, and that you've given us here on the show. When we come back, Democratic candidate for Missouri State Senate, Joan Barry, will be with us. You're watching Midwest Talking Points on Charter Communications.